What if I told you this? The most critical thing in your life, the paycheck that feeds you, the savings that protect you, the money you think is yours might not actually be real at all. That governments and central banks can create it out of thin air, wipe out its value overnight, but still manage to convince you to believe in it like it's some sacred trust. Sounds like a conspiracy theory, right? But it's not. This is the world we're living in. And the moment everything turned upside down already happened while most of us were sleeping. The date was the 15th of August 1971. President Richard Nixon appeared on American television one Sunday evening, interrupting regular programming. With calm authority, he announced that the United States would temporarily suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold, meaning foreign countries could no longer exchange their dollars for the gold that had always backed them. Temporary, he said. Emergency, he said. But it was permanent, and it was a total revolution. That evening, the link between money and truth was severed. Dollars were no longer a promise of tangible wealth. They weren't a guarantee of anything but themselves, just tokens of faith in the government's word. To grasp why this matters, we need to rewind a bit. After World War II, world leaders had built what they called the Bretton Woods system. In this arrangement, currencies were pegged to the US dollar, and the dollar was pegged to gold, $35 for 1 ounce. The system worked because it brought stability to the world. Inflation was controlled, trade was predictable, and gold was the ultimate anchor. But by the late 1960 seconds, America was in deep trouble. It was burning through heavy money on the Vietnam War and social programs at home. Dollars kept flooding out into the world, but the gold reserves at Fort Knox couldn't keep up the pace. Foreign governments started lining up, saying they wanted to swap their paper for actual valuable metals. And America realized it couldn't keep its promise. Nixon's announcement was supposed to be a temporary fix, but nobody ever reopened that gold window. By the mid-1970 seconds, we'd stepped into a brand new era of money. Money backed not by gold, but by decree. Economists call this fiat money, from the Latin meaning, let it be. In practice, money existed because governments said so. And for the first time in the modern age, there was no natural ceiling on how much could be printed. What's striking is how quietly this all went down. There were no uprisings in the streets the next morning. Shops were still selling groceries. Workers were still cashing their paychecks. The illusion was kept alive. But deep down, something fundamental had shifted. Humanity entered a universe where trust, just trust, was the foundation of the financial system. And once trust becomes your only anchor, history tells us cracks will show up sooner or later. Because this wasn't the first time money got separated from reality. The Romans learned this lesson the hard way. Coins that were once pure silver got gradually debased by emperors, scrambling to finance their armies and extravagance. Nero dropped the silver content in the denarius by nearly a third. Later, rulers pushed even further, until the coins became nothing more than bronze with silver plating. Inflation soared, credibility collapsed, and citizens turned to bartering. An empire that once prided itself on order watched its economy fall apart because nobody trusted its money anymore. Centuries later, the Yuan dynasty in China tried a different experiment: paper money. At first, it was brilliant. Light, practical, easily transported across long distances. But before long, the emperors discovered the temptation every ruler faces: why tax your people when you can just print what you need? The presses ran hot and credibility evaporated. Merchants refused the paper, inflation spiraled, and the glorious project ended in collapse. See the template? Technology changes, centuries change, but the temptation stays the same. Whenever rulers can separate money from real value, they do it. And every time they do, the public pays the bill. That's why Nixon's maneuver in 1971 wasn't an isolated incident. It was another verse of a very old melody. The difference this time was scale. Rome collapsed, but the world went on. The Yuan dynasty sank, but commerce continued in other regions. But the dollar in 1971 wasn't just America's currency. It was the backbone of the global order. When it abandoned gold, the whole world followed. Currencies floated, central banks experimented, and governments tasted the sweet poison of unlimited debt. At first it seemed to work. Freed from gold, central banks could cut interest rates to stimulate growth. Governments could spend freely, knowing they could always roll over their debts. And the public adapted. Inflation in the 1970 seconds was painful. But by the 1980 seconds and 1990 seconds, things seemed to be settling into place. A new doctrine was born: that central banks could manage the economy like an engineer adjusts a device. They called it monetary policy. And it gave us decades of credit boom, bubble, and crash, each one more massive than the last. But the truth that history lays bare is this: systems like these aren't designed for stability. They're designed for momentum. The debt has to keep growing, the money supply has to keep expanding, trust has to keep being maintained. If it slows down, the danger of collapse begins. Like a shark, it has to keep swimming or it's over.
And here we are, today. A world where money has no foundation except faith, and where central banks and governments treat the printing press as their biggest weapon. Since 1971, global debt has exploded to levels that were previously unthinkable. In 1970, US federal debt was roughly $370 billion. Today, it's over $34 trillion. The numbers are so massive they're almost ungraspable, like trying to imagine the distance to a star. Yet this system depends on these numbers never being questioned. Think about the crises we've been through. The dot-com bubble at the end of the 1990 seconds, the housing collapse in 2008, the pandemic stimulus of 2020. Every single time, the prescription was the same. More money, more credit, more intervention. We're told this is stability, but this isn't stability at all, it's acceleration. And acceleration always has a price tag. You can see that price in the erosion of purchasing power. In 1971, an ounce of gold was $35. Today it's over $2,000. In the United States, a house averaged around $25,000 in the early 1970 seconds. Now it's approaching $400,000. Wages went up, sure, but not proportionally. For most people, the experience of living in this fiat era has been simple. Work more, save less, own less, and pay more for everything. Yet the system keeps insisting you believe this is normal. This isn't just an American story. When the dollar left gold behind, the other major currencies followed suit.
Europe, Japan, China, none of them are tied to any fixed reality. Every central bank is now playing the same game, manipulating interest rates, inflating debt, and praying that trust holds. And here's the grim truth. Trust holds until it doesn't. History tells us that clearly. Take a look at Weimar Germany in the 1920 seconds. Crushed by war reparations, the government printed its way out of obligations. At first it worked. Factories started running again. Workers got paid. The system stumbled forward. Then prices started doubling weekly, then daily. Families carried wages in wheelbarrows. Kids made kites out of worthless banknotes. And when trust finally vanished, the entire economy collapsed, leaving behind rage, extremism, and the seeds of an even darker age. Or take Argentina, a nation that's defaulted on its sovereign debt 9 times in the past century. Every time the cycle was the same: overspend, inflate, devalue, collapse, reset. Yet ordinary Argentinians have lived through this, adapting to a reality where saving in their national currency is madness. They hide US dollars under their mattresses, or flee into property, or now in some cases even into cryptocurrency. This is what life looks like when money loses its meaning. But here's the unsettling question. If history shows us this pattern, why do we believe it won't happen again on a global scale? The United States isn't exempt. Europe isn't exempt. China isn't exempt. The system we've built since 1971 is globalized, intertwined, and completely dependent on one fragile thing: trust. Once that trust crumbles, there's no easy way back. Yet most people never stop to think about the most basic question: what is money anyway? They treat it like it's natural, eternal, unquestionable. But money isn't a law of nature. It's a human invention. It's a system of trust, rules, and enforcement. Once upon a time, it was seashells or salt. Then it became silver and gold. Then gold-backed paper. And now, it's paper backed by nothing, or even digital entries in a bank ledger. See the trajectory? Every step takes us further from truth and deeper into abstraction. And every step leaves the system more vulnerable to manipulation. Which brings us to today's frontier: digital currency. Governments are racing to launch central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. They promise efficiency, convenience, instant transactions. But they also mean total control. Every transaction traceable, every dollar programmable, every citizen's financial life visible to the state. If money is already an illusion held up by trust, imagine the moment when the same system can decide with a keystroke whether your money works today or not. Some see cryptocurrency as the solution. Bitcoin, for example, was designed after the 2008 financial crisis as digital gold. Its supply is fixed. Its rules are enforced by code, not politicians.
In theory, It offers an escape from fiat's endless inflation. But it's also volatile, vulnerable to speculation, and not yet a genuine replacement for the money people use daily. It might be part of the solution, or just another page in the same struggle. The real lesson here isn't about gold, Bitcoin, or even fiat money itself. The real lesson is about power. Every time money gets separated from something tangible, those in power gain freedom, and the rest of us get exposed to risk. Governments can spend beyond their means. Corporations can borrow without discipline. Banks can profit from bubbles, and ordinary citizens end up shouldering the burden when everything unravels. That's the cycle. That's the trap. And it started the day money stopped being real. So what do we do with this knowledge? First, we stop pretending. We stop telling ourselves that debt doesn't matter, that inflation is temporary, that governments always know what they're doing. We look at history and recognize the signs. Second, we protect ourselves. Not by rushing toward a single magic asset, but by understanding the system for what it is. A machine built on trust, and one that's bound to break down sooner or later. Financial education is the shield. Knowledge of economic history is the weapon. Real wealth isn't just money. It's awareness, resilience, and the capacity to adapt when illusions fall apart. Because history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Rome's denarius, China's paper notes, Weimar's banknotes, they all remind us of the same truth. Once trust is shattered, money dies. And when money dies, societies change forever. The day money stopped being real isn't just a date in 1971. It's a warning, a reminder that nothing that seems permanent actually is. If this gave you a new perspective, at Wealth Phantoms, subscribe. History has the answers, I'll show you where to look.